Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. And it is indeed time, the moment you guys have all been waiting for. We are going to send those foul woodland sprites back to the forest realms, and hopefully things will go good for our Dawi brothers here. So as far as our composition goes, we have the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, who I feel are absolutely an MVP in this matchup. These guys, great defensive stats across the board, very high leadership, they're armored, they're shielded, which is essential against the Wood Elves, especially when playing the Dwarves. And but more importantly, their melee attack does fire damage. So against all those different tree folk and even the heroic tree units, they're very, very good because some of the Wood Elves units actually have a 40% debuff against fire damage. So these guys are huge, and they do well against even the standard Wood Elf infantry. And I just feel like they're a very safe, well-rounded pick. So these guys, in conjunction with the front line of Longbeards, actually do pretty well. Longbeards, again, very similar to the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. Armored, shielded, they have charge defense against large foes, so if they're coming in hard with tree ants, they'll do okay. And, they have really good stats. 49 melee defense when buffed. It looks like 39 melee attack right now, and pretty good weapon strength at 32 for how much you're paying. So that's my front line. I have two runesmiths here, so I have one that has the full suit. So if you guys go ahead and take a look here, you can see he has all the different runes, all the upgrades, the Master Rune of Grungni for the missile resistance, which is crucial. And then on top of that, I also have a second runesmith, but he only has the Rune of Wrath and Rune just to kind of be a damage dealer. So very useful there. I also have a group of Coilers. These guys are very, very good in this matchup as well. They hit hard, for how much you're paying especially. But more importantly, they're armored and shielded. So they can take that Wood Elf missile fire all day and do a very, very good job of that. And what I found in a lot of these matchups is sometimes if the Wood Elves play a very heavily ranged build, it can go a long time, and essentially you're going to have to run them out of ammo, and these guys do a very good job in conjunction with the Longbeards in doing that. So I also decided to bring BELEGAR. I haven't brought him in a while, and he's just an absolute thug, but more importantly, he has the silver shield, 120 armor, outstanding leadership, and just a very sturdy unit. So I just wanted a lord that could take a beating, and BELEGAR is definitely one of those type of lords that can just take a smackdown. So he's ready, seeking some vengeance, and we'll see how it goes. But more importantly, guys, the fun stuff is here. I have 2 flame cannons. So I'm so happy about this DLC, the fact that I can now use builds like this where I can actually bring flame cannons and not feel like I'm just going to get crushed. Because these things tear the Wood Elves apart. And, if they're bringing like Dryads or Tree Men or, anything like that, those guys will get roasted by the flame cannons. But more importantly, the flame cannons actually do really well against just standard, infantry, because most of the Wood Elves infantry are very lightly armored, and the flame cannons against lightly armored units are just so good. You guys will see them in action in this game. So I have 2 of those. I have a Master Engineer here. I like him a lot because I had been playing a lot of games where the Glade Guard would just fly over me, harass me, and was very annoying. And the Master Engineer is good at just keeping pressure on him and not allowing him to have free range. And if the Glade Lord, who does hit like a truck, decides to land, he can use the entrenchment ability, give himself or another heroic unit, or any unit for that matter, very good defensive stats, and also has ballistics calibration, so very, very good there. And also, I do have the Banner of the Lost Hold, which gives 12% weapon damage to nearby units, so very, very solid stuff there. So in the back line, I have the Grumbling Guard. These guys are great, and more importantly, you don't need a ton of armor piercing against the Wood Elves. I bring them more specifically to essentially provide that Vigor aura, because the Wood Elves matchup is very attritious and very long, so having that kind of sustainability is very important. But, again, these guys got their axes. They're ready to chop down some armored trees, so if need be, they're a very, very good unit here. So that's pretty much it for my army, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy that build, and as far as my opponent's army, let's get right into it. So here he has the Glade Lord. What's nice about the Glade Lord is he does do magic damage, so against the Dwarves, he's going to have heavily mitigated combat stats. But, other than that, he still has armor piercing, he does cause terror, but thankfully a lot of my units, including the Longbeards, are immune to psychology. But still, very, very scary unit. He can do ranged harass, just very well-rounded. The Glade Lord is very strong. You can see he has a potion of toughness there. Up on the hill here, he has Waystalker, which is pretty good. I really like these units. That focused missile attack is pretty good at kind of picking off runesmiths, units like that. Just all around well-rounded unit. Looks like he has 2 Wild Riders up here. Is it 2 or is it just 1? So he just has 1 Wild Rider, which is pretty good. I always like to bring at least 1 type of mobile cav unit against the Dwarves. Even if it doesn't have traditional armor piercing, it's just very useful to be able to get into their missile troops, their cannons, all that type of stuff. So looks like he has a front line of the Glade Guard here. So these are the armor piercing ones. So very well played on his part, bringing the correct ones. They do have armor piercing attacks, but on that same note, guys, they do have magic damage. So, against the Dwarves, I'm going to get a huge damage resistance against these type of units. He has a Glade, what is this back here? Is this a Branch Wraith? So essentially the Branch Wraith, it's kind of a tongue twister for me. It has kind of a multitude of different spells from the Lore of Life as well as the Lore of Shadows. So it looks like he has the regeneration effects, and he also has the kind of the midi Fate of Buna effect. I think he also has the Pendulum. I'm not sure. Can't quite see that. So he has Wildwood Rangers back here, which are pretty decent against the Dwarfs. They're just armor-piercing infantry, but they're more designed for like anti-large, and they only have 40 armor. So those Longbeard axes are definitely going to, you know, get into these guys and do a pretty good job, but still, he's just bringing all the armor-piercing to the yard. So then he has Treekin. So these guys are going to get roasted. As you can see, they have that little symbol over there with the, I'm afraid to take my mouse off. I can't really do that, yeah, without it switching. But they do take a lot of extra damage from fire. I believe it's up to 40%. But still, they're armored. In sustained combat, if I'm not able to focus them down, these guys will hit pretty hard. They actually have 55 weapon strength. So he has 2 of those, and then just a ton of armor-piercing infantry and armor-piercing missile attacks and, you know, all that kind of fun business. So let's get right into the action, guys. It's time to cook some Wood Elves. So he's advancing pretty quickly, and what's so cool about the Wood Elves units is they can fire while moving. But still, you can see the Dwarves are, you know, I'm still at 75 models, and they've taken quite a few, you know, and you can see, it's actually cool. You can see the shafts stuck in some of their shields, so that's pretty cool that they're actually, you know, defending against that. But I am taking some casualties in the front line, but for the most part, it's going pretty well. And now it's judgment time, guys. The flame cannons are online. He's now in range, so hopefully we can see some cool attacks here, and they'll start firing shortly. It looks like he is using the Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma, which does a little bit of kind of single target damage, but still, you can see those Longbeards are just taking that like absolute champs. So I just kind of started opening firing on some of his missile troops, and in retrospect, I should have probably targeted those tree folk, but I wanted to get rid of these missile troops so then I could just have a really focused melee engagement. And you can see, like, this group starts off with 60 models. It already takes out a few and does some pretty substantial HP damage, and these guys realize that this is not fun for them, having fire rain down on them, so they actually retreat just out of range. And he does come in with his group of Wild Riders, and so the flame cannons will continue to fire. I form a battle line here. I try and intercept them with BELEGAR, but he outmaneuvers me just a little bit. But still, I'm able to get a Rune of Wrath and Rune, which is very, very crucial. So you can see all my dwarves are kind of scurrying to defend these flame cannons because they're a very, very high value target for me. And you can see I did use the ballistics calibration to improve the reload skill of a +20 and then also 30% accuracy, which is helping. And you can see I'm getting a little damage in on these missile troops back here, which is nice. And on that same coin, the Wild Riders are trying to find their way in. They are going to get in, but unfortunately, these guys aren't going to do much. They get into those flame cannons a little bit, but you can see they do almost no damage. And they get enveloped by the Longbeards here, and Wild Riders only have 40 armor, so Longbeards will cut through them really quickly. And you can see the Grumbling Guard have surrounded them on the back, so they're sending these foul woodland sprites back to the forest realms. They got their shirts off. The dwarves are definitely not a fan of that. They're getting in there and just going, well, I suppose Slayers are a fan of having shirts off, but the dwarves are definitely the bosses of that. Need to make that clear. So they chop down these foul elves and send them scurrying back to the hills, you can see, and it's pretty funny. It looks like they scurry pretty darn fast, but they're also taking Quarreler fire, so very, very good stuff there. I was able to mitigate that risk, although he did do a little bit of damage to the flame cannon, but I think this one was actually just from the missile fire. But this flame cannon still has, 3 full cannons firing, and it's doing a pretty good job. So we're just continuing to devastate his missile troops because I just wanted to bring it to a melee engagement and get rid of those type of units. So in retrospect, I probably would have targeted the Treekin because I would have gotten a much larger bonus from the 40% there. But hey guys, we're all learning here. So I think I actually did switch at that point and was trying to hit them. So I'm advancing my front line. I felt pretty confident having dealt with that kind of mobile threat, and it looks like they are coming back in, and I actually thought they were shattered, so I made a bit of a mistake there. But my Quarrelers are going to turn and fire on them, and you can also see the Master Engineer realizes the threat. He's got his gun, and he's going to, oh, it looks like he missed that one. That looks like that deer or whatever it is kind of loped over that and jumped over the missile fire. But he does get a nice little charge on the Master Engineer, but he also goes down at the same time, so the Master Engineer just an absolute boss here. Definitely a big fan. And the Quarrelers, in conjunction with the Master Engineer, should be able to just break these guys and send them running to the hills. So the frontline engagement is underway. You can see the Rune of Wrath and Rune and the Grumbling Guard are in here. And, this isn't, a huge, great matchup because these Wildwood Rangers do have armor piercing and they're not heavily armored themselves. So I'm not getting the full perk, but look at all those buffs. They get the Mighty Oathstone, which gives them that charge defense. They get the Rune of Negation. So they're cutting through these units really quickly. And having 95, that serious leadership and pretty darn good. Look at that, 83 melee defense. So these Wildwood Rangers are not making great contact at all. That must be pretty tough for them. You can see the Flame Cannons are now focusing the Tree Folk. They're doing a pretty good job, but my opponent does use Earthblood to give them regeneration and also uses the Shield of Thorns to give them missile resistance as well as weapon damage. But this is definitely bad for them because the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are going to be so good against these guys. Even though they're armored, that fire damage is going to be huge. So that's kind of a cool effect aura right there, the Shield of Thorns. I really like that. It's pretty neat. You don't see a lot of effects like that. But the Dwarven battle line is doing really, really good. And now that the back line has kind of been secured against these threats, things are going a little bit better. The Flame Cannons are shooting pretty freely, but my opponent pulls in his Blade Lord here and is going fisticuffs with his Master Engineer, who did use Entrenchment, which is really good. Gives him 36, armor piercing. Unfortunately, that's for his missile effect, but more importantly, it gives him 22% physical resistance. But I wonder, since this guy actually does magic damage, is that not that good? That's something I'll have to look into. But thankfully, he is supported by the Grumbling Guard, and he hits like a truck with his melee attacks. He actually has like 250 armor-piercing attacks, so he's doing really good against this Glade Lord, considering that, you know, that's the lord of their army here. But the Glade Lord is kind of encroaching on these flame cannons, and I believe actually just start shooting him point blank here in a moment. But the Quarrelers are also providing some crossfire. But on that same note, the Waystalkers have kind of found a nice little perch up here on the hill, and are just shooting down at some of my heroic units, and I think these are the ones that actually destroyed the cannon. You can see the Branch Wraith has kind of found a comfortable spot where he's not being threatened, and you know, doing pretty well for himself. But in the front line, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, they're slaying these trees. They're getting deep into those tree folk and doing a pretty good job planting their axes, lighting them on fire. You can see that the tree kin are shaken. They're getting that earth blood, which is quite nice, and which is really keeping them in the battle, but the Dwarves do not get that, and they're doing a pretty darn good job. So, one second, I think I accidentally minimized there, so hopefully the battle's still going. There we go. So the Treekin, yeah, they got that Earth button. That's a really good effect, and something that I've observed that I think is quite strong. I played against a multitude of different tree, you know, kind of tree folk. I was going to say tree folk builds, but wood elf builds, and there's these kind of you know, tree folk Death Stars that seem pretty strong. So they bring the Ancient Tree Man, they bring the Treekin, Dryads, a bunch of different units like that, and, you know, Eternal Guardians, and they just have this Death Star, and they use the Earth Blood and the different regeneration effects to really keep them going. So very cool. But you can see the fire is starting to get to these guys, and they are indeed getting chopped down. So let's go ahead and see if we can find where BELEGAR is. I think he's in the front line, so he's actually in the back. He's going pretty deep back here. But again, BELEGAR is a linebacker. He can take a beating all day. I know he was taking some focused missile fire earlier and doing pretty well for himself back here. So pretty happy about that situation. Back here, the Runesmith did pretty well, helping to defend that back line. Also, the Grumbling Guard are, you know, taking some serious missile fire. And this is why you bring shields, because these guys are just getting dumpstered by that missile fire. But thankfully, Dwarvish units have such good leadership, despite the fact that there are 10 models, they're continuing to fight to the death. So you got to give these guys some serious props. Grumbling Guard is absolute troopers, and they will get in there with their armor piercing, and they'll do really good against these Treekin. This is kind of what they're designed to slay, and those flame cannons are continuing to just decimate these Glade Guard back here, which is so useful because it's very hard to deal with ranged units, you know, as a dwarves in general. But still, the flame cannons, the fact that I'm actually able to get away with using them is really, really nice. So it's a very pitched melee battle. You can see that my Longbeards across the board are just taking a beating, but they're still steady despite all that. Definitely inspired by their Lord BELEGAR in there, doing a really good job. And the Flame Cannons are continuing to provide support, but more importantly, this Master Engineer is doing a great job defending my back line. And they were able to drive off the Glade Lord here, who had to run to the hills. And I'm not sure if he had already used his potion, but it looks like he just came back. But, you know, as he was running away, he was taking missile fire from the Glade Lord, and things were going pretty well. So the Master Engineer is shooting at this Branch Wraith now. Who's decided to get into the melee engagement. He's getting in there pretty deep, and it looks like he does a little bit of a jump kick animation. That's pretty cool. I actually didn't notice that. He has like a skeleton propped up on his back. That's pretty awesome. I wonder if he causes terror. That would actually make sense. It looked like he causes fear. Yeah, I can't quite get a good mouse click on him here, but yeah, very cool unit. But the Dwarf, their pocket here is just so strong, and the Treekin are sick of being lit on fire by those Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. They're scurrying off back to their woodland realms. Definitely going to go regrow some branches, hopefully. But yeah, things are going pretty well here. You can see BELEGAR, even though he doesn't have armor piercing, his weapon strength is still, you know, what, 400 plus. So he's going to hit pretty hard and should be able to get through these guys. And he can take that beating all day with that 120 armor and extremely high melee defense, which is actually, let's go ahead and see what it is right now. It looks like it's pretty high. So the Dwarves have finally won out the battle in the center line. The Flame Cannons, despite taking massive missile fire all game, are still in line. This guy's even coming back here and should be able to man that cannon. And you can see the Master Engineer is kind of keeping tabs on this Glade Lord, who just used his Potion of Toughness and should be returning to the battle shortly. But thankfully, the Potion of Toughness and all of that, which I think is very healthy for the meta, getting rid of all those potions on like Horribles and things like that, it's not as good as it used to be. You can see the healing effect on him isn't that substantial, and this Master Engineer should be able to start sniping him out of the sky, though, you know, he's pretty low himself, so we'll see how it goes. So we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit here. You can see a lot of the Wood Elf units are starting to get routed off. My opponent does charge in with the Glade Lord, and I do use the entrenchment to give him that defensive stat. And he's going to fight him and do pretty good, but unfortunately the Glade Lord is still is a lord, well, not a legendary lord, but a lord of the army, and is very strong. He does cause terror, and he's able to terrify the Master Engineer and should be able to finish him off from there. So this guy put up a fight. Guys, got to give him props. Oh, did he get beheaded? That's always, oh no, it looks like he just got bit in half. Did that actually happen? I've never seen that before. It looks like the Glade Lord's dragon may have bit him in half. That might be a new thing. I've never seen that before, but anyways, at that point, so the dragon was satisfied. He decided to just flee and go back to the forests, and that's all she wrote for the Wood Elves guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that one. I really like this matchup. I like the Beastmen versus Wood Elves matchup. I love the Dwarves matchup. It's so much fun. Just being able to use flame cannons. Now, they didn't rack up a ton of kills, but this one was focusing the tree folk for most of the time and was taking a lot of fire. And look how little they generated, only 10 and 19 kills. And those flame cannons were able to roast them, as well as the missile troops pretty well. Also, the Dwarves just stand and fought. The Warriors of Dragonfire Pass were just absolute heroes. So Very good stuff there. As far as my opponent's missile troops, they got a lot of kills, actually. I mean, 43, 42 against, you know, a small kind of elite-style dwarf army is pretty good. So very, very well played to my opponent there. So I look forward to seeing you again. Pit.com. I guess I'm giving a shout-out to your website. But, yeah, it was a lot of fun, guys. I hope you enjoyed that Dawi cast, and more content coming soon. Take care.